Buddy, it's Carm here. Coming to you with the second part of Record Show Finds. It's Monday afternoon. Had about 4 or 5 inches of snow today. Just did a little shoveling a while ago, so we're not quite there yet, but getting close. So yeah, starting in where it left off. Yeah, with that Hallworth record, that was in the larger room that Chris and I were in, and then we went to the smaller room, which I remember from last year finding quite a few things. At first didn't find quite as much, but as I got further into the room, that's when these things started coming out. So yeah, I think this is the first one I picked up. Tom Varner Quartet. It's on Soul Note from 1980. And you can see their French horn. Not many, it points out in the liner notes, there's not a whole lot of French horn players in jazz. There's John Clark, he's one that I know of, and I think I have one album by him. But you can see a great lineup here. There's Ed Jackson, who I wasn't familiar with on sax. Fred Hopkins, excellent bass player, and Billy Hart, one of the all-time greats. Had the pleasure of seeing him a couple times live a few years back with Charles Lloyd. But very nice. It's a nice balance between more free-form, free jazz and straight ahead. All the compositions by Varner himself, who in the notes it was saying how at the time he was working in a delicatessen. That was his regular job, and but he was just he'd been studying for a while the music, classically trained, and then pursuing his real passion of jazz, and then made this album, and it's excellent. Great contributions from the whole group. Excellent interplay, especially between the sax and the horn. His approach is almost like that, more like a trombone player, which, I mean, there's not too many precedents for this instrument, so I guess you had to kind of follow that way. But yeah, there's this piece 1212 is actually, he pointed out, was his apartment number, not like an esoteric mathematical equation. But yeah, I've given it one listen so far, and it's a great. I don't know if you'd call it like post-bop, or there's all these subgenres and various terms, but it's it's an excellent, just like just everything else I've heard on Soul Note, it's very much in that vein, just right between free and traditional. It's a good entryway into either one. So yeah, excellent stuff, and guess I'm gonna have to look into it further, see where he's gone since then. This next one is very happy to come across. Bolacete, Jungle Suite, solo guitar. Great Brazilian guitar player. Been a fan of his since the 90s when I heard his album Ocean. And this one's on Dancing Cat Records. It was recorded in 82 and came out in 85. It's George Winston's label. Beautiful solo guitar. It says on here, impressionistic paintings and stories of hidden and magic places. And yeah, you can see by some of the titles there, it's just a very kind of beautiful. It has a slight dark misterioso quality to it, but still very light and airy like a lot of his music. I love his album Motion, and this is right there right with it. And it does kind of fit the cover. It has that kind of lush, but still somewhat dark quality. What's rather unique about it too is that he plays a classical guitar with steel strings, which I usually think the classical is nylon, but that gives it a really interesting timbre as well. And he already has such a distinctive style. But yeah, if you're a fan of his and solo acoustic guitar in general, would highly recommend if you see this around. And most of these in this room were quite cheap, so yeah, it was a great find. Just lovely stuff. This next one I knew about this one for a while and never had really come across it. Marion Brown and Gunter Hampel, Reeds and Vibes. I've been a longtime fan of Marion Brown ever since hearing him on Harold Budd's Pavilion of Dreams. Just sublimely beautiful. His sax playing on there is just it just takes you up, to the heavens. I mean, it's amazing. And this is a more raw, improvisational approach, as you would imagine with Gunter. It's a combination of solo pieces and duos with the various instruments between them. There's Flute Song, which also features some percussion and improvisation. But it would have been interesting to hear Gunter. I know he was also a bass clarinetist, but he didn't play that on this album. But that would have been interesting to add to it. But yeah, it seems like another one that has a nice, just the right balance of free form. It's more free than composed. It sounds like, but there's melody, there's lyricism, but there's also kind of leaping into the unknown, which so it seems like there's a nice balance between those two. And great to finally have this one after knowing about it for quite a while. It's on the Improvising Artist label, Paul Blaze label from 1978. So yeah, excellent stuff. A great representation of them and the label. Now this next one, I have to say, was probably the best in the whole room, and of course it was another Chris handoff. Yeah, we were both next to each other flipping through, and he hands this one to me. And for a few moments didn't even say anything. He just kind of let me see for myself. Three musicians, music from the Rochester Folk Art Guild. You can see the little post-it up there. Private Press, Folk Psych. And then after a few moments, he said, you should have this or you should hear this. It's kind of similar to Oregon, but still different. And it sounds basically like three musicians who actually aren't credited on here. There's no names, which kind of adds to the mystique of the whole thing, who play these various ethnic instruments. And they play it in such a way that it's not like they're trying to sound like the place of origin of the instruments, but the actual instruments themselves, it sounds like the roots are actually coming through the playing of the instruments. Oh, here's Rocky, by the way. Let me show it to you real quick. Here he is. He was the new guy. Just arrived about a week and a half ago, so he's going to help me go through these. Yeah, it's just you kind of get a sense that the lineage of the instruments come through rather than them trying to bring that forth. I don't know if that makes sense, but I listened to this twice. I mean, I flipped it over twice after the first listen. It's just so powerful. They even do a 23rd Psalm singing it, which is it was soul stirring. My favorite piece is Phrygian improvisation for flute, tenor recorder, and zither. So it's almost transcendent. I mean, it's just very really hard to put in the words. It's like an ethnic fusion, but you get the feeling that there's really something going on between the players that could only go on, musically, not conversationally in the verbal sense. But just fantastic. It's from 1977, and let's see which label it's on. Sounds like a very small label out of New York City. Desmar Music, which I wasn't familiar with. But just if you see this around and you're interested in this kind of acoustic music and ethnic fusion in general, would highly recommend it. It's just really a beauty. And thanks to Chris, he he knew I'd like it too, because I really like this kind of acoustic. There you go, buddy. And finally here, Billy Cobham, Warning. I laugh because I kind of knew what I was getting into with this one. You can kind of see by the cover, and it's on the GRP label, which it's a nice label. It's known for more of like a lighter kind of fusion. But Chris was also sort of ribbing me about it, like as if to say, "Are you sure about that?" Or I don't know, because it's very much. Because we both love fusion, particularly of the '70s, and of course Chris, his knowledge of so much, including the fusion, is very vast. And I like that era too, but when it gets into the 80s, it gets a little, it's more digital and a little, again, I hate to use the term like cheesy, but it's kind of in there along those lines too. But it's still a pretty fun record. I really like some of the players on there, especially Baron Brown on bass. And I like that the warning there that he gives. It's kind of funny. But, I got a nice little insert here. Yeah, Baron Brown on bass I really like a lot. Plays in a band called Vital Information. And yeah, if you're expecting like the Mahavishnu Orchestra, anything like that, or like Billy's early solo work, it's definitely not like that. But if you're coming from maybe like an 80s pop rock, you know, leaning, and you're interested in exploring this kind of music, you know, the more, you know, jazz fusion, this would be a pretty decent record to start with if you're coming from that orientation. But if you're expecting anything like the early stuff, I think you might be disappointed. But no, it's pretty fun, and you know, at the right time, it's pretty enjoyable. So, well, that's it for these the LPs in that room. Afterwards, we went out into the hall, and there was a CD section, which it was the same seller from last year. He was selling progressive rock and electronic and some krautrock, and so I picked up a few things from him. Syndromeda and Matt Hallworth, Mythical Pursuit. Syndromeda is someone I had heard of for a while, and he's kind of in that, you know, the kind of the Berlin school tradition of older and newer synthesis. There's him there. So his real name is Danny Boots, and he's Belgian, it appears. And Matt Hallworth is a comic book artist who's integrated actual musicians in his comics with permission, and even collaborated with them on stories. But this is really nice stuff. I put it in right away as I was driving off from the show, and yeah, it was great stuff. Definitely in that tradition with the sequencers and everything. Rocky really wants to. I think he wants to show one of these. Now the next one here is actually what's playing in the background. Brendan Pollard. Great, again, like sequencer based, very much in line with the stuff that Axel had sent me. Axel book, and you know, like Bruno Enderle's records. Very nice. You could hear it, you know, sequencer based. Great electronics. And the seller was telling me that the Mellotron he was using, the tapes that are in the Mellotron, if you know anything about the Mellotron, it uses tape loops, and the tapes actually at one time belonged to Edgar Froese. He was using his, which were 30 years old. You could see written on that second paragraph there. So I thought it was really fascinating, and that was the instrumentation there. But yeah, it's just a great album. Goes through a lot of different, a lot of moods and phases. But yeah, very, very, you know, very much my thing. And a couple others here, which are by the same artist, in a group called Rogue Element. Really along similar lines, and the Tangerine Dream comparison is pretty apt with these two here. Definitely bears the influence, and yeah, that's what we found. And it was a great time. A lot of things that I know we both like. And after the show, we went and did lunch and talked and caught up on things. It was really nice. And then afterwards, when we got back to the cars, he told me he had a couple of records for me, Chris. So yeah, I'll show these here. Really nice Kitaro. We got the Obi strip on there. These are, they got the English title here, Silk Road Tenjiku. Yeah, very nice. It's on Sound Design label, 1983. Yeah, much appreciated. I know I have another, at least another one or two other versions of this on in different format, you know, CD and cassette. But yeah, to have it with, it's a beautiful booklet in here. You can see them there. Just very nice. Well, you definitely notice I'm a long-time Kitaro fan, especially of the early work. So yeah, yet another LP by him. And this next one here is actually one I already had, but very beautiful stuff. Moonflower Ascending, Sheila Roberts and Jim Reeder. It's piano and synthesizer. very kind of orchestral, similar to maybe later Constance Denby. Just has a kind of a, kind of a quiet grandeur about it. But very beautiful stuff. I'm going to pass this off, I believe, and I have someone in mind who would like this. Perhaps it could be someone who's watching. But yeah, just very tranquil, very nice nocturnal music, I'd say. And finally, he gave me one by the same artist, although she goes under a different name here, Shayla, Vision Seeker. This is from 1987 on Jansa Music. And this is really beautiful. Again, it's piano, synthesizer, and some percussion. I really like the second side where it's pretty much all synthesizer. And in the final piece, Ancient Myth. It's very beautiful. I had said that this kind of looked like Sedona, and it actually was recorded in Phoenix, Arizona. And just, yeah, it has that kind of mystical, very meditative. Kind of reminds me of the Valley of the Sun label, which is a label I've been a long time fan of. But yeah, very beautiful stuff, and yeah, Chris definitely definitely knows that I like. But yeah, and I have a few things that I eventually got to get to him put together. See if he doesn't already have them. I don't know. But yeah, this was great, and thank you for these, Chris. And yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar with Chris's channel, I'd really highly recommend checking him out. I mean, I've said it before. I mean, along with Derek, Chris was really a great inspiration and the boost I needed to get me to even make these videos. And after so long of just watching and just getting really excited by him, and his generosity and breadth of depth of knowledge is so vast, and he always shares it. He's willing to share it with people, and yeah, definitely. If you have any interest in the stuff that I show, the core of what I like, you definitely would be into what Chris has to show, and it's always coming up with something new and great surprises. So please check him out, subscribe, comment. I think he'd love to hear from you. And yeah, thanks once again, Chris, for help, guiding me through another show, and and just kind of pointing towards these great gems that are out there. So I hope you're all well, and until next time. I'm not quite sure when I'll be back, but I have a few things in the back of my mind to put up there. So thank you all for watching, and hope you're all well, and peace, love, and joy.